Welcome to Mouth Matters, open and honest conversations about oral cancer. This is going to be a 20-minute webinar, so we're going to get right to it. Today, our topic is caregiving, which is really tough because I think caregiving is almost as difficult as the person going through oral cancer. Our guests today are Laura and Sam, and they help their dad cope with all the needs and changes related to oral cancer. So Laura, do you want to go first and tell us a little bit about what you learned about being a caregiver for your father?
Um, I won't lie, Sal will back me up. It was really hard work. Can't really say we're professional about it because we didn't know much about it, did we, Sam? So it was
No,
really hard.
obviously our dad, we all grown up and moved out. So dad was largely back in the family home with mum. So we were part of it, but maybe not, 100% of the time.
Right.
And dad was a particular sort of character. He was very stubborn. He was quite old school. And he didn't make caring for him the easiest task going. Um, and I think one of the things we can say we definitely struggled with the most is probably his mental health side of things.
Yeah, so I think that the more we can prepare the patient with what their needs are going to be and how they're going to cope with them to help empower them to figure out ways to get through it using their support network like you. Yeah, they're right. That's right. There's no guidebook. There's no way for us to know how to care for someone when we've never been through it. I mean,
And nobody
anything
tells
like it.
you. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, nobody tells you. They told our dad what's going to happen before the op, what's going to happen during the op, but no one said after. It was almost like the operation's been done. There you go, get on with life. And then we was all like,
Right.
what do we do? What do we do now?
And it's like, figure it out. So one of the things that I understand you both helped with was giving him food that he could swallow.
Yeah, so like I said, he was quite stubborn and he kind of got into a bit of a thing that, it hurt or everything was just hard work and he just won't do it. So we kind of got into a bit of a habit of having a bit of a rota of checking in and making sure he'd had something for breakfast, making sure he'd had something for lunch, and just being a bit of an external check-in, and doing that prompt, and being that kind of voice in his head to make sure that he was doing the things he needed to do, regardless of if it was going to be that bit more difficult or uncomfortable, maybe making sure that he had pain relief beforehand.
Right.
But rather than, not that it was ever the easy way out, starving yourself isn't an easy way out, but rather than hiding from the thing, we all knew he needed nutrition, and he knew he needed nutrition, but it was almost easier in his head to ignore that. So being that external prompt to him, and reminding him of the importance of it.
Did you ever feel conflicted of the balance between making him do what he needed to do, and yet honoring his choice of where he wanted to be and what he wanted to do with his own life?
I think Laura might be better at answering this because I come from a bit of a medical background. My head more goes, this is what you need. So I was always that bit firmer and sterner, but then he knew that's what he got from me. I think Laura was probably that little bit more of a gentler, emotional
It
side.
was, yeah, it was upsetting. We knew he needed the nutrition and he needed a try to eat, but it was upsetting seeing the state that he got himself into because he physically couldn't. He would literally have 2 or 3 mouthfuls of soup and then he was done. Um, and to see our dad cry, which we've never had in the whole of our years. I mean, I'm 46 now. My dad passed away when I was 40. And in the 40 years, I don't think I ever saw my dad cry until after he had his operation. And it wasn't really nice to see. No.
Well, did you find yourself saying things to him that you hadn't said to him before, like what you loved about him, or what memories you had that you'll never forget? Did you find yourself saying things that really surprised you or that were really difficult to say, but you knew you needed to say?
I don't know. I mean, you think, Laura, but no, I think obviously we had two different periods with Dad. We had his first operations, and you know, the 11 or so months after that, where you're very much in the mindset of he's been treated, and we've been left with, you know, an absolute barrage of side effect symptoms, and he was almost a skeleton of his former self, both mentally and physically. But you are being hopeful, you're being, you know, trying to be upbeat, so almost dwelling on what maybe we used to do wouldn't have been that helpful in that instance.
We tried to set goals, didn't we? We booked a
Yeah,
family holiday, tried to set long-term goals for him to aim for.
Beautiful.
yeah,
That's what I was going to ask you next is what are
yeah.
your tips? What are your tips and tricks?
We tried
And
to
I
find
think
what he was struggling with the most and tried to work on that. So the biggest thing Dad was struggling with, aside of many other things, is that he was staying up all night. He wasn't sleeping. Obviously, he wasn't taking nutrition. He was running on empty all of the time. So he felt lonely. So one of the things that we did is we got him a puppy. So as crazy as that sounds, is between all of the family, we decided that actually what he needed is he needed a companion. He needed someone that was going to be there when
Purpose.
everyone else, because everyone's life, you know, after those first few months of you really being there for that really poorly person, life has to get back to normal for lots of people, and it's trying to make them feel like they've not been left behind. And
It was
actually,
almost a purpose, wasn't it, for him to get out
yeah,
of bed?
giving him a companion, giving him a purpose, giving him a
and did it work?
yes,
Yes.
yes, although
That's
he
a
then
great
just
idea.
stayed up and cuddled the puppy most of the night, so this didn't massively help the sleep issue, but I think it helped the companion and the giving him a purpose of getting him out and getting him walking. And he absolutely idolized his dog.
Something to focus on other than his pain, wasn't it?
Yes,
That is brilliant. I love it.
yeah, so that worked really, really well.
So you planned a vacation, planned something for him to look forward to. You got this puppy. Was there anything else?
I think just baby steps. I know Laura used to research lots of different kind of foods and textures and things that could be things that he used to really like, and how we could maybe make that into a form that he could actually consume, to try and think outside the box a bit, rather than him being constantly stuck with Ensures, which he was just bored.
Fed up with. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
fed
I
up
mean,
with.
I know that there are various kitchen utensils and things to use to puree the food.
Mm.
I personally found that spinach, pureed spinach, was really cooling on my mouth during radiation. And I remember I loved pureed sweet potato.
Mm. I think
There
it was
were
trying to flip the mindset of everything that you can no longer have and enjoy to, okay, let's find some new stuff that you might like, and you might encourage you to eat, because obviously there's so much that you've lost that that's not a positive way to keep thinking.
what were his favorite foods that you discovered you could give to him in a different way?
Oh, he really liked salmon, and that's one of the things we were trying to work out, wasn't it, Laura? How to kind of
Yeah.
create a kind of creamy, liquidy form of salmon. I don't think we ever quite got there, to be honest.
No.
We got pretty
Really?
close,
Yeah.
but the texture was still a bit too thick for him, wasn't it?
Yeah. He struggled, didn't he? Massively with swallowing.
Yeah.
Is there anybody listening on the chat right now? Put in your questions so the three of us can address perhaps your specific question about caregiving. Does anybody have a question or a thought? We did see one thought that pets definitely make a difference, and I love that idea.
Yeah.
There are some kitchen utensils that help break down food without pureeing it. There are solutions. Is there anybody having an issue right now that we could help you with ideas to overcome? But if not, how did you organize the support network? I mean, I find that I didn't want plants or flowers. I felt that was very difficult for me to take care of, and it's one more thing I didn't want to take care of.
Mm.
But
I think
how did you organize friends and family?
we have a really busy, manic family. So I think just trying to make sure that there was kind of that constant bubble of, people checking in and trying to do different things. I think that we didn't know the charity existed until after Dad passed, and it's not until after that we realized actually how much other support potentially was out there that we'd never managed to tap into. One of Dad's biggest complaints all the time was that there was lots of other support networks that he'd found for other cancers, but he didn't feel like they reflected him. They didn't have his difficulties, and he couldn't find anyone he could relate to. And I think had he have known about the support group, and had he have known about the charity, that his experience potentially would have been very different. So I think when me and Laura spoke recently, we said, you know, I think one of the biggest things you can do as a caregiver or to support someone in that role is to be the kind of advocate, to maybe do the groundwork, the research, find out what support networks there are out there, and almost offer them up on a plate to someone, because sometimes people can be so low in their mood, and they know maybe that they need the support, but actually trying to find that, they're not in the right headspace to find that. So if you can give that to them, and as family members, we're maybe not always the right people for them to open up to, and maybe that external someone they can relate to a bit more, they might find better.
I agree. I actually remember a member of our synagogue coming in to speak to me, and there's sometimes chaplains don't know how to talk to you in a way that's comforting. There's chaplains, there's friends outside the immediate family. And so it's important for the immediate family to get these friends to come and visit, to take them for a walk. There's so many outer resources to bring in. Now, as a mentor myself to a lot of oral cancer survivors, I'm not always the perfect match for each person. So when you're talking about support, it's really important to find the right person. You know, somebody maybe in his age group, somebody who, you know, has a similar cancer.
I think it's as well, like, you know, your similar likes and dislikes, and almost the similar losses, the things you're grieving for. You know, one of Dad's biggest things was he liked to eat, and he liked to be social, and he liked to chat, and he would chat to anyone who'd maybe going to the pub, and the person he'd sat next to would be his mate for the next 4 hours, you know, and you'd come back, you'd know everything about them. And he went from being that person to then trying to have a conversation with someone, and they wouldn't understand half of the things that he'd said in that first sentence, and then he wouldn't talk. And that was a big part of who he'd always been. So you know,
did he have a notepad? How did he deal with that?
he hid.
He couldn't really write very well, could he? His spelling and grammar was quite poor, so that was the hard part, wasn't it? He couldn't. We tried to set him up on a phone,
iPad as well.
We got all sorts of random messages, so that didn't work either.
No, he never really got over that barrier, to be honest, and that was one of the hugest feeders into his low mood.
It's not easy to keep somebody positive.
No, not at all.
But that's when we came up with we was going to do a big bucket list night, wasn't we?
Once he got his terminal diagnosis.
And he got very excited about it. We had a lot of friends and family that came together to organise this big bucket list night, and he was very excited about that. So that lifted his mood.
And what were some things? Did you check off anything on his bucket list?
Unfortunately, no. So he got his terminal diagnosis, and we tried to, you know, turn things into a bit of a positive, and we said was basically kind of throw him this party, and it's going to be like a bit of a fundraising thing, and we were going to try and raise some money for him to do some things on his bucket list. But sadly he passed away far too quickly for even the actual night itself to happen. So that was obviously really, really sad, but it still definitely lifted his mood. He was very chuffed and honoured to know that many people had kind of donated prizes for the raffle, and that he was shocked that he was in that many people's thoughts, because I think he'd got so low and felt so isolated that he didn't realise that all of these people still cared, you know. And I think that was a big we kind of text him every time, oh, we've got this now and this is happening now. He's like, oh my God, really? Like, yeah. So that definitely helped.
Yeah.
It's just sad he didn't get benefit from it.
I would imagine that if you did a video where people sent in little videos about what they love about him, that he could see that. I mean, why should all these wonderful comments come after someone's died, right? Wouldn't
Yeah.
it be
Always the
just
way.
so beautiful to read all that beforehand? And you were attempting to do that with this party, but it would be for anybody listening who's thinking about, hey, if this is a race to the end, how can we as quickly as possible let somebody know how much they're loved?
Mm.
Because it is so comforting. And I believe that the hardest thing about knowing that you're going to die soon is feeling like, how are you going to be remembered? And to know how you're going to be remembered makes it easier to let go.
Yeah, Dad's biggest thing once he had his diagnosis was he had this pressure of making sure that everything was set up once he'd gone. So he wanted to know that the house was sorted, that the dog was sorted, that he went on a mad couple of weeks of decorating, started ripping down wallpaper, repainting everything because he wanted everything done before he went and was no longer around to do things. And that was his little project, effectively, which is bizarre.
Kept him busy.
That's the way he went.
Didn't it? It kept him busy and took his mind off of stuff. So yeah, it was
Well,
his.
but also it's
positive.
very comforting to know that the dog he loves is going to be well cared for, that his home isn't going to be a burden. I mean, all of that is very comforting. So I think wow, we've covered a lot of really interesting topics, and it's about time to end. If there are no other comments, we'd like to thank you all for joining. Next month, we're going to have another great topic, 20 minutes long. And if you miss it, just go to YouTube, and the Mouth Cancer Foundation will be posting all of these webinars. So if that's it, any last thoughts from anybody on the call, or you, Laura and Sam?
No, I just want to say thank you for making the conversation real. I don't know if you can see me. I don't know where I've gone.
It's okay. We can hear you.
And that when I go around, so I work for Denplan, and I go around delivering mouth cancer awareness and what have you. And it is a topic that does come up. So it's like an extra additional thing for the softer side of skills that rather than the clinical side that you know, we can say direct to or signpost to this has worked, that's worked, this has happened, what have you, and just talking about it more. And really interesting, in January I was over in Northern Ireland, and I can't remember the training for mouth cancer that this lady dentist had been on, but we both decided it's a bit like if you go back 30 years, nobody really spoke about cancer. It was also, you know, the big C, nobody would say the word. So really, maybe we need to be discussing it more like this in real terms rather than not, or just thinking that it's just for a little, you know, minority of people.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you Lynn for your comment. And we want to end on time. We have one more minute. So if nobody else has anything else to add, thank you all for joining us. And any comments that you have, put in the YouTube comments, and then any one of us can respond. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Have a great month, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.